Welcome to the DTC Insider Podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisenthal.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider Podcast. I'm Brian Roisenthal, your host, and today I'm going to interview Ryan Rush. He's the founder of the Feel Good Lab, maker of plant-based pain relief and recovery products that were developed in his family's pharmacy. Before starting the Feel Good Lab, and listen well, Ryan was an aerospace engineer designing helicopters and jet engines, but left that career to take the innovations from the family business and turn them into a worldwide DTC brand. Hey, Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Brian, likewise. Good to see you.
Yes. So please, before we get started about the Feel Good Lab, could you please elaborate a little bit what you did as an aerospace engineer and why you left? Because I know I covered that briefly in the intro, but I'm curious.
Totally. Well, why I left is going to get in a little bit to how we created the Feel Good Lab. But, really, I got my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. I'm located in Connecticut. We're right in the heart of the aerospace manufacturing world. So we have Pratt & Whitney, makers of some of the craziest jet engines you could ever imagine, some stuff you can't even imagine they're working on, and Sikorsky helicopters. So I was fortunate enough to work at both. And then as a design engineer, right? And so what's kind of funny is when I was in college, you'll see all the Lego sets behind me if you're actually watching. I used to love building stuff and Legos and math. And so my guidance counselor said, you should be an engineer. And so I get this job offer right out of college to go to Sikorsky to design helicopters. And I'm thinking, this is the coolest job you could ever have. What actually happened was I was working on designing a bolt for a helicopter for 6 months, and I absolutely hated it. It just wasn't me. I'm more of a personable person, especially for an engineer, and sitting in front of a computer working on one bolt for 6 months just drove me crazy. So I was actually fortunate to kind of still stay in the engineering realm, but become a consultant. I saw a big gap. We would contract with many manufacturers that were making the parts for the helicopters or the jet engines, but they didn't understand. They were small mom and pop shops. They didn't understand kind of how we worked internally at the big companies. So I got to use my knowledge of the internal workings, plus my engineering expertise, and then really relied on my favorite skill, which is connecting with people. And so I started my own sales and marketing company in the aerospace world, and I did that for many years, and it was awesome. But then to answer your question of how I got out of it, I was actually at home at dinner one night. So little backstory, my grandfather was a pharmacist, my dad, 4 of my aunts and uncles, my brother, that is the family business. And I was the black sheep. I actually got far away from it, right? Mechanical engineering and pharmacy are pretty much opposite ends of the spectrum. And my dad told this story at dinner of a product he was working on in the pharmacy. So he's an expert in making drugs that you can deliver through the skin. And I use that term drugs because most of what he was early stage working on were drugs, things like ketamine or ketoprofen, that when you deliver them through the skin to the site, you don't get those severe side effects from taking pills. Like ketamine is a crazy psychoactive, but when you deliver it to the site, it actually has a local anesthetic effect where it helps with pain. So he became an expert in delivering medicine through the skin. Well, he then started to realize that nature often provides the best medicine. So after 3 decades of working in the pharmaceutical industry, he started to experiment with natural plant-based ingredients. And he made a prototype in the pharmacy to give to some patients that were really having a tough time responding to those potent pharmaceuticals. And one patient in particular he had worked with for a very long time, she called back the pharmacy in tears because this was the first thing that had ever worked for her pain. And I hear him tell this story and I said, Dad, are you telling me that this is a natural product that doesn't need a prescription? He said, yeah, it could be sold directly over the counter. I said, we need to bring this out to the world, not just our small little town in Connecticut. And that was really when the Feel Good Lab was born. It was only a few months from then, by the time the brand was developed, the name, the packaging, and I quit my job as an aerospace engineer to really take on all of the great innovations that my dad and brother are doing in our pharmacy. And that's what our mission is at the Feel Good Lab. I'm so fortunate. I have them doing all the product development. They're the best innovators in the space I could ever wish for. And I get to focus on building the brand, building the business, and all of that side of it. And it's been a great collaboration so far.
Nice. Well, first, congrats on helping people the way you guys do. And second, I can totally relate to what you said before about the, let's say, unsexy day-to-day job of an engineer. I'm not an engineer, but I have a degree in computer science, and I have worked as such, as a developer and many other stuff related to the profession for many years before going into marketing. And I said I totally relate because it sounds cool. I mean, at least nowadays, you say being able to build an app and say, "Oh, I just want to build this," and being able to do it. But when you need to sit in front of the computer for hours and fix bugs that you cannot find solutions for, and do some digging online to find to troubleshoot the errors, it's not that sexy anymore. So you like the idea, you like the outcome, but probably the process is not for myself, let's say, in this case for you, right? So it happens. So I'm happy that you found your passion in the family business, and that you took it from only a city to actually more people and helping many others. So I know we touched base on this a little bit, but could you please explain what you do at the Feel Good Lab? Which products do you sell?
Sure. Yeah. So, we make our core competency is plant-based medicine to treat pain. And there's a common misconception that if it's natural or plant-based, that it must not work, especially for our older demographic that, really needs us. Because the scary statistic is there's 100 million people in chronic pain in the United States alone. That's almost a third of our adult population. But what's even worse is that 2/3 of them don't think they're ever going to live another day pain-free for the rest of their lives. They have no hope, because they've tried everything. That's the thing I hear every day when I do my customer service calls. They call me up and say, "Ryan, I've tried everything," right? And so our goal is to, one, give them hope before it even comes to products. The way we talk to them, the way we communicate, our marketing, our branding, our inserts and our packaging, we need to give them hope. Because I'm a believer that whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So when you come in with this mindset of nothing's going to work, we really need to break that down and say, no, there is hope. It's not going to be easy, but there are other options out there that you haven't tried yet. And we're here to help you find those. And the reason I tell that story is because we launched with this amazing natural pain cream, the thing that I mentioned, the prototype my dad had. And, I'm holding it up here on screen now, just showing it. This is our flagship product and our best seller. But really what we've been able to do is take the innovations that my dad and brother are working on every day with patients, the things that are working, and bring those through the Feel Good Lab. So we've now launched a line of supplements that we call Fighting Pain with Wellness. If we can improve your overall wellness and reduce that inflammatory burden that is oftentimes the root cause of pain, not just taking a pill to mask the symptoms, which is the pain, but understanding what's the root cause, what's causing it. And out of control inflammation is the number one thing causing chronic pain. So we have supplements like a curcumin, which is an anti-inflammatory. But I have to be careful with those words. It's commonly used to support the inflammatory response of our body, but technically we can't make those FDA claims of being an anti-inflammatory, right? But things like fish oil and other supplements like that we pair with our awesome pain relievers that give people more success. So, the Feel Good Lab, in my opinion, is one day going to be a wellness company. But today our niche is in pain relief. And there's plenty of people that need our help and support. Like, I don't see us transitioning for quite a while. But my dad and brother are working on many other things than just pain. So I can't wait for the day that we can really bring those innovations to market, things like osteoporosis and other chronic conditions, right? Gut health is a big one that they're working on right now.
Take me back for a second to that family dinner in which you decided to go all into your family business. What was next? What happened after that dinner? Did you start distributing the products to your neighbors? Did you create a website? Guide me a little bit through the key milestones of that story.
Yeah. So the cool thing about this is I've always been entrepreneurial, and I didn't realize why. Growing up, having my grandfather own a local pharmacy, my dad, they worked for themselves. So like it was in my DNA. I just saw it. And entrepreneurship was also becoming this sexy thing, right? Gary Vaynerchuk is on the rise. And so I was like obsessed. I was listening to every podcast you could imagine. I had tried to start many different businesses. We had developed an all-terrain wheelchair using my engineering techniques, and we got a grant money and all these sorts of different things. but none of them got over the finish line, mostly because they were really just trying to be Band-Aids versus being something that I was so obsessed with and passionate about. And the funny part is, you talk about bringing me back to that dinner, it was right in front of me the whole time. All of the work that my dad was already doing, 30 years of experience, was my product development pipeline, solving one of the biggest problems that you could ever have in the world, which is chronic pain. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to create all these other solutions and things using my engineering degree. And so I was so ready. I had already designed websites for my other businesses. I had already gotten on Amazon. I had done these little things. But this, now I had that real purpose, and the product was right there. So for me, it was really fast. We were able to spin up the brand very fast. We were able to create the website. And it just became like, that was probably one of the best 3-month periods of my life, because you're just so excited and you're making so much progress. And I got to take all of those lessons from those 5 other businesses that were failures, that I were doing as side hustles, right? And really put them all into this. And so those failures allowed me to really make 3 months that typically might take somebody more close to a year, because they don't necessarily know what levers to pull.
Yeah, I think a few months ago, I was reading a post on LinkedIn that said, I think it was the founder of a SaaS company saying that it was his 5th business, right? Not the first, not the second, the 5th business, right? And I was thinking about myself, and it's like, hey, my current business is not the first one or the second one. And it's like, man, there's a reason for that. And it's the lessons we learn is that we grow older and we start thinking of other stuff that before we weren't. It's the partners we choose, is many things. So do you have a few lessons in mind to name for everyone listening or watching that help you along the way and can help them now?
Definitely. And what's funny is the big lessons I have actually come from this business. So I had learned those little mistakes to get started that really helped. But, now we're many years in. I say we're going to be a 6-year overnight success, because, we're in a tough category dealing with billion-dollar conglomerates, which spending hundreds of millions of dollars per brand on marketing just in topical pain relief, like even niche down. But I've learned a ton of things. So one of the first things, this is a funny little lesson. We did not get our trademark. We have this amazing name that we spend so much time, and we use Simon Sinek's Start With Why. He's got an amazing TED Talk on it. I'd recommend you watch. So basically, like, understanding the why of our brand. And it was to help people feel good and to be able to play with their grandkids, right? They don't want pain relief. They want to be able to play with their grandkids or play golf or go garden. So that's how the name, the Feel Good Lab, was created. Well, a year into the business, we didn't have our trademark yet. We had done the trademark search and seen that nobody had the exact 4 words, the Feel Good Lab. We had the domain. We thought we were safe. We meet an attorney and he says, you are building your business on a foundation of air. And he was angry. He was like, what are you doing? We're like, oh, no big deal. We'll just apply for the trademark. It kind of like lit a fire under our ass, right? So we apply for the trademark. This stuff takes time. 6 months goes by. We get a letter back from the patent office. You're denied. There's a lip gloss brand called Dr. Feelgood, and you're going to be confusing to consumers. We're not going to give you the trademark. Our lawyer sent us a red line email saying, you need to remove all your inventory from everywhere you're selling, rebrand the company, etc. And we were just in shock. We're like, oh my God. Now, I think one of the skills of a good entrepreneur is being super resilient and like almost stubborn. And so for me, I was like, F you. Like, we are absolutely not doing that. In fact, we fired him that day. We're like, you're on our team. You're telling us to just like wave the white flag. Meanwhile, he wasn't that wrong. Like, it was a huge uphill battle. It took us a year of fighting and fighting and fighting. And ultimately, we had to hire new attorneys that actually dealt with the specific area of trademark expertise we were dealing with and knew the person in the patent office that was dealing with us. That was the ultimate one, right? It cost us a bunch of money, a lot of time, and a lot of lost sleep. We were inevitably able to win that trademark. And now we're out defending it, because part of owning a trademark is you need to defend it or else you'll lose it. So we have people popping up all over the place, especially in the CBD space. We just had one, Feel Good Factory Lab. they're trying to take our success and kind of win some of those free Google Analytics, launching a product in topical CBD. So we have to go and send cease and desist letters out, protecting the trademark. But that was a big one. Do the little things, right? Making sure your tax and finance documents are in check, getting a good lawyer, your domain name, your trademarks, all of that is so important. It's boring and it seems like it's slowing you down. But if you're inevitably going to be successful and you don't do those, it's going to be catastrophic for you down the line. And the bigger you get, the more expensive it's going to be to fix, right? So that was lesson one. I want one other lesson to give you. Picking the right partners. Unfortunately, I had two other co-founders, and there's many reasons why it didn't work out. Now it's just me in the business. They didn't particularly like each other. That was a big one. Having 3 chefs in the kitchen is very challenging. We all did have very complementary skill sets, but we treated the business very differently. All 3 of us had different ideas of what it was. To me, it was my life. It was my obsession. To another one of them, it was just a business and a way to make money. And another one was a way to be a creative outlet. They were just not rowing in the same direction. So when it came time to really figure out how we were going to move forward, because it wasn't working, unfortunately, we didn't write a prenuptial agreement, which is typically done in marriages, right? Like, what happens if this doesn't work? You get this, I get this. This is because we didn't write that. We did not have, we weren't able to part ways on good terms. And I blame myself for that. Ultimately, one co-founder was extremely great to deal with, and he made sure that the business was left in a good position where he could still get what he was worth, but also make sure the business was taken care of. The other co-founder basically said, no, there's no contract. I'm keeping everything. And my big lesson there was, this one in particular came onto the business later. I should have treated him like an employee, because as an employee, you have all the right in the world to say that to me. But as a co-founder, you have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders that we raised money from. You raised money from. So for you to just bail and keep everything, you're really putting the business in a tough position. And to feel like you can just do that with no repercussions, contractually, he was completely right. But as a co-founder, there's a responsibility you have. And he didn't see it that way. So those are 2 big lessons kind of in the early stages of starting up that I think are very important to get right, because they could be a big deal when they go wrong.
Yeah. What do you think about this? I know some people say that, your business partners or even your team is like family, right? Do you think that way?
No, I do think that way, but it's wrong. Your family's not going anywhere. Your family loves you no matter what. Your family is your family, even if you don't like them. Business to me, and I have a hard time, this is like a theory, and I think it's completely right, but I have a hard time living it because I treat even my employees like family. Like, I love them. I enjoy, they're my friends and my family, and I want to spend time with them and I want to take care of them. But ultimately, it's more like a sports team, right? Brian, if you and I are on in the business together and you're not pulling your weight, we need to bench you. Ultimately, if you're really not pulling your weight and you're actually counterproductive for the team, we need to kick you off the team, because we're not going to win. And ultimately, we are in business to win. Winning means helping customers, making money. That's it. So, with family, you can't bench them. You can't kick them off the team. But in business, you have to. You have to be able to do that. And that's one of the skills I'm learning as a CEO. I'm not good at that. I'm a people pleaser. I love people. I want to, I don't want to have those hard, tough conversations. I'm getting better at it. But to me, it's the right way to think about the business.
Yes. And I think there's one book I recommend every entrepreneur to read, which is called Traction by Gino Wickman. There are many of those, but this one is not the ultimate let's say operative system, but they do have like what they call the entrepreneurial operative system, and many successful companies implement it. Many successful companies also implement some others or no system at all. But I have chatted in this podcast with some entrepreneurs that needed to make some tough decisions, such as firing some family members of their company because of this, right? And I know it's tough, but some of those frameworks will make that easier for you if you're having a tough time, you or anyone listening, right? I mean, who does love having those conversations, right? Who loves sitting in front of somebody else and say, hey, you're fired. Hey, we don't need you anymore, whatever, right? It's not fun at all. But those frameworks at least will give you the first step, which is to be aware of the issue that you have in the team, in the company, anywhere, right? And then, of course, you can do whatever you want about it. You can have the conversation or not. You can monitor it for another 30 days, 90 days, but you have a problem, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, you had told me about this book, so it's now on my Audible list. So I'll let you know when I finish it.
Yeah. I mean, what the thing is that something about what you said, I relate to because I used to have a startup. We raised funds. We had investors. We said with my partner back then, which is a dear friend of mine now, we are not going to burn the money the same way people do when they look at their bank account. It's like, oh, it's the money we raised, and we did burn the money after a few years, right? Of course, not on purpose. Things happen, and we were really young. I'm 35 now. I was like, 20, 20-ish, let's say. But it's I lost that thread. What we were talking about, I wanted to say, oh yes, I remember. Yes. So the lawyers we had in the startup said, Brian, I know you come from the computer science background, and the other one was in the sales, let's say, background. And they said, you need to learn more about the generic stuff of how to be a lawyer, how to be an accountant, how to be, the basics. I said, but there are careers for that, right? How can I learn? But you need to know at least how to avoid getting in trouble in the basic, things. As you said, with the patent, with the trademark, with everything, right? With when you hire an employee, you have responsibilities, right? So you need to learn some of the stuff. So my question to you, I guess, is: do you think that the skills that it is enough to start a company with the same skills as before, or that now you find that certain profile of people are successful when founding a company?
Well, there's two pieces. I think it's totally changed for me, especially being an engineer and a technical person. I was always like, oh, the technical founder, like that's the way to do it. Now I see it's all about marketing. Doesn't matter how great your product is. If you can't convince people to try it, then it won't go anywhere. So, and it's more than marketing. So one is, I think, having the skill sets in marketing is important. Also the skill sets in personal branding or branding in general, but really like having an audience that pays attention to you. And then beyond just the skill set, like if I was going to start a business today from scratch, my partner would have an audience. So as an example, I love golf, love it. I follow all of these golf influencers. I would create some sort of stupid golf game. And I say stupid because it's in terms of like what that business would be like versus what I'm doing now. It's just, it's not as meaningful. But the point is it'd be passionate for me. So I'd be able to get through the ups and downs. And if I found one of these golf influencers that's got millions of people that watch their videos every week on YouTube, and they became my partner, and we promoted this product on their golf channel, we would guarantee a start with incredible amount of sales and momentum. And we could leverage that into retail and leverage that into these other areas. But those eyeballs, that's what the game is all about. How do you generate eyeballs? So whether it's marketing or, in my opinion, if you could be the type of founder that has already built an audience, another idea for that is if I was starting the Feel Good Lab again today, the first thing I would do would be creating a social media page around education and building a community. Those words are easy to throw around, but they're really hard. So it's not like, oh, just build a community, but then focus on getting the products ready and whatnot. No, like really deliver an insane amount of value and build a place where people with chronic pain want to come and be together and they can help each other. Then you listen to that community and you allow that to go into your product development. And then when you launch your product, even if you have 2,000 people in this community, you have 2,000 raving fans. And when you're not selling anything, now we're trying to build a community, but we're selling something. So people are a little bit more skeptical. If you're not selling anything, it's much easier to build a community.
Yes. they are probably even asking for it, is it if they know you have the products and the power to help them with their chronic pain. I mean, why not buying the products, right?
Exactly.
Makes sense. So about what you said, a shout out to Greg and Chris Mead. I had Greg on. I mean, at CrossNet, right? They have done what you just said, right? They created CrossNet, uh, the four-way volleyball game, and they're having massive success. And then they said, hey, let's partner up with Daddy Duncan and let's create a good sports, right? So that's exactly what they did, and they're doing great as far as we chatted last time. So it's a great way. You need to leverage some way or the other, right? And partnering up with an influencer or somebody that has the audience you're talking to, you have half of the battle already won, right?
100%. And shout out to Greg and Chris, because they've been so helpful to me. You know, Chris, every time I've got a question about something, whether it's Amazon or even on this Danny topic, I called him the other day to get his opinion on a few different things in the space. You know, immediately answers the phone. He gives me such great advice and insight. And I think it's so important to have these friends and mentors that are a couple steps ahead of you. Because one of my big things, like one day I hope to be able to invest in startups. Going through the fundraising process makes, like, it's the worst. You spend all this time raising money. 99% of people you talk to don't invest. You're not focusing on the business. My thesis is, even though I'm a first-time founder, yes, I had those other businesses, but they weren't successful enough for me to even like include them in my pitch. I will definitely want to invest in second-time or third-time founders because they know what it takes. I didn't know what I didn't know. Neither did you. You talked about being 20 and burning the money by accident. I did the same thing. It's not because we were like, going crazy on spending sprees. It's just because we had to learn those lessons on investors' dollars. So it's an inevitable consequence of, if you're a first-time founder, you will make mistakes with that capital. You have to, as part of the lessons to get to where you need to get to. But if you've done it again, like if I was going to go and restart this business from scratch, I would probably have to raise about 1/10 of the money to get to where we're at. And I could do it in about 1/10 of the time, because all of that extra 90% is unfortunately hard lessons that we've learned.
Yes, exactly. So please tell me about the story of launching into retail. I know you launched, I believe, with the CVS and Target during the
Yeah.
pandemic. Is that right?
Well, when we got in, it was not the pandemic, but the day, you can't make some of this stuff up. You really can't. And there's 3 real reasons we failed, and I'll get into all of them. And fail is relative. We actually did pretty good, but we didn't have the money and the budget, and we learned how hard it is to get into retail. So the day that we got in, I'm not kidding you, the day we were on shelf with both companies was the day that the CEOs of those companies were on the news with the president of the United States saying they would stay open during the pandemic. It was right when it happened, when everybody was petrified and people didn't leave their house for a few weeks. So here we are, just getting on shelf with a brand new brand in an incredibly crowded category with nobody going into the stores. And if you're going in the store, you're certainly not browsing new products. So we wanted to heavily lean on this beautiful packaging that's got all of our ingredients on the side, and it differentiates. It looks fresh and new and healthy. People did not care at all about that. One thing I also learned is people don't care about it even when it's not a pandemic. It was a big lesson. That's lesson number 2, which is you need to drive marketing and eyeballs and feet into the stores yourself. People are not just going to go into the store and just see your beautiful packaging and learn what they need to learn and buy it. Unfortunately, the number one reason they pick up a product is price. So during the pandemic, I would go in the store, I'd have my mask on, I'd peer over the aisle next to it, and I'd watch people engage with our aisle. I heard multiple people say our price of our product out loud, and scoff at it, because we were more premium, more expensive. They didn't understand the value proposition. They thought all the products in the aisle were the same. So that's the third issue we made. We launched at too high of a price point, too large of a bottle. Online, you want that high average order value so you can justify shipping and all these different costs, customer acquisition costs. But in store, it was the opposite. So we've since launched a product that's half the size at almost half the price. Now we have a much more approachable price point in line with the other products in the aisle. So now it's like, oh, this one's about the same price, but has all these other benefits of being clean, natural ingredients, arnica, turmeric, all these ingredients that this new health and wellness consumer that's shopping the aisle is looking for at a similar price point. They don't actually do the math and say, what's the cost per ounce, right? You got Tiger Balm in the aisle for $9 in a jar that my pinky could barely fit in. Then you have BioFreeze, in a huge container for a couple dollars more, right? So they're not looking at it that way. They're looking at that ultimate price. So those were the three big mistakes that happened. One of them was out of our control. The other two were well within our control, and we just didn't know what we didn't know. The other thing is we launched with both retailers at the same time. That was so stupid because, we leveraged. Once we got one, we got the other. We were talking to both, and once one said go, we told the other, and they're like, okay, you're in because of that, right? That FOMO, that fear of missing out for them. The reality is now we had double the amount of stores, double, in proximity. Now one of them was in the middle of the country. The other two were on the two coasts. So now we had to focus on all of these things. And unfortunately, we didn't have the team in place to execute properly. Plus those three mistakes made it a huge uphill battle where we said, okay, let's keep our products online. So we're still on target.com. We get the logo. It's great. But let's not go to retail until we're really ready and we have that built up demand from the online presence that is helping us drive the sell-through in the store. Because ultimately, units per store per week, that's the game. What's your category average? What's the threshold your buyer needs you to hit? And if you don't hit it, you don't grow.
I was thinking while you were talking, because I read, and even more lately, I read a lot of posts online and a lot of, on podcasts as well of many founders trying to find the next lifeboat, right? So my DTC efforts are not profitable anymore. I cannot grow in my Shopify store. The advertising platforms are more expensive than before. Nothing's working online. I'll go to retail. It's easier, or at least I get the products there. I don't have to buy, from Facebook and they probably don't realize everything that you're saying, that they are actually, showcasing their product right next to the competitors without any explanation, nothing that differentiates their product from the rest of the products in the category. As you said, probably the product size matters a lot in the shelves because of how it impacts on the price. So if, besides everything you said so far, which is pretty valuable, and I'm sure that it made many founders open their eyes as they listened, what advice would you give to those listening that are considering going into retail to have, let's say, in place before they do? Which things they should consider besides that?
Sure. Well, one other thing to add is there's incredible slotting fees, which means these are just checks you cut to the retailer to put you on the shelf. We're talking close to $100,000. So, you got to make is it a fixed cost? Is it a percentage? Fixed cost. Usually it's about $50,000 per SKU. That's just the price barrier to entry. You want to be on our shelf, we need $50,000. So there's that. Keep that in mind, right? But let's just say you can get through all these things. Number one piece of advice, hire someone who's done it before. Straight up. If you can find someone who's successfully launched a new brand into these same retailers, they are going to be worth every penny.
Right. I knew it was expensive. I didn't know it was, I think expensive and cheap is relative, right, to the value. But in the end, probably you can imagine that $50,000 is going to give you like a super big, let's say shelf for the, and it probably is like one or two slots of visibility and all the way back.
One spot.
Spot. Well, I'm sure it must be worth it. So before you go, I have a few more questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Talking about one thing to get people through the door, the customer acquisition, and that's what we have been discussing mainly so far. But what about the customer retention? I know that customer retention is a very broad topic. So to be more specific, what do you do special when people reach out to you or have questions? Because I guess that it's a category in which people might have questions or yeah, they might get in touch with you, or they want to give it back. I don't know. Do you have a team in the customer, like a CX team, or do you handle that? What do you do different to keep them happy?
I do it all myself and I love it. It's my favorite part of the job. Um, Unfortunately, do you think most people that reach out are reaching out to tell me how great we are? No. They're reaching out because there's a problem and they're angry. But here's the cool part about it. When you really care, nobody cares more than I do in the world. And that's one thing I learned. We've had people help with customer service. They don't care as much as me. They can't possibly care as much as me. So the level of customer service just isn't up to the bar that I've set for what we want to do. The second is when a person calls me and realizes that I'm a real person, I'm the founder of the company, this is our family mission, we really want to help them. Even if they still want to return the product, that's okay. This number might sound astonishing, and maybe it's 99% instead of 100, but I genuinely cannot think of one instance where a customer has reached out to me angry via email, text, the chatbot on our website, or calling me that hasn't left being a fan of the brand. They may still have returned the product. Oftentimes I offer it to them to give to a friend or family member that'll need it, because pain, in pain, not everything works for everybody. So oftentimes the product doesn't work for certain people. That's okay. 100% of the time they leave thanking me and saying this was an amazing experience and I'm going to tell more people about your brand. I'm sad it didn't work for me. But most of the time, actually, it's people, orders are messed up, whatever. It's not that the product didn't work, but they're just upset with something. And then they end up talking to me and feeling this connection to the brand. That's just amazing. And I've joked internally with my team that we should mess up every order on purpose, because we get the chance to make it right and connect with them and show them how much we care. And it takes our brand from just any other brand, like a BioFreeze, ICI, all the different conglomerate competitors we have, to a way different experience. And then the other thing we do is we love surprise and delight. So we write handwritten notes. We put t-shirts when you've ordered a couple of times. We give you free product, right? We surprise and delight like crazy, because we know that, like I mentioned, that experience, that hope that we give people that this is different, is a huge part of the battle. I used to be ashamed at what's called the placebo effect. I'd go to these investor pitches and this, a-hole investor would say, you're nothing more than the placebo effect. It's like, no, we're FDA registered. We can make claims. The product really works. Now I'm like, okay, what if we are? Look at these thousands of testimonials of people saying that we've changed their life. I don't care what it is. When you can impact somebody that way, I'm not saying like you made my life a little better. I have gotten multiple handwritten notes from people saying this has changed their life. I don't care what is the ultimate root cause. Yes, I believe in my product 100%. I'm not saying it's the placebo effect. What I am saying is the placebo effect is one of the most studied, repeatable things we have in science. When you believe that something is working, you feel better. And when you feel better and you have a better life, that is the only thing we're trying to do. It's really what our name is, the Feel Good Lab. We just want you to feel better. So however we do that, whether it's the handwritten note or it's the product, it's ultimately the combination of the two. That's what we do that's so different than any other company in our space that you'll ever deal with.
Yeah, as you said, I think nothing beats the transformation story, right? Not even the vehicle. I mean, the vehicle could be whatever as long as it's good and not harming the person, right? So if the transformation story is there and people are mainly, let's say, raving fans and super happy about the results, who cares, right? So I think that was it. Do you think that there's anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to tell the audience about?
No, but the only thing I would say is if anybody has more questions or wants to pick my brain on anything or try the products, I love to connect. So whether it's on LinkedIn, Ryan Gresh, or email ryan@thefeelgoodlab.com, just reach out. And I really enjoy making connections, whether you're another entrepreneur or you're an athlete. We also have a sport recovery line, so products that help improve recovery. Or you have somebody in your life in chronic pain and you have some questions about what we offer. I'm happy to connect.
That's awesome. And let me ask you, the same way you're offering these to the audience, and I wanted to thank you about that, by the way, did somebody help you along the way? Did you have any mentors? You mentioned Chris a few minutes ago, but did you have anyone you would like to give a shout out to?
So many people along the way. My dad, number one. I mean, he is the brains and the inspiration behind this. And if you saw the type of work he does within our community, the type of people whose lives he's completely changed, like that's what motivates me. So I'm really fortunate to be able to work with him and, take what he's done out to the world. And then also, people that I don't know yet, but has really inspired me. One of my favorites is a guy by the name of Naval Ravikant. He's the founder of AngelList, but he will drop some of the greatest quotes you've ever heard in your life. So if you listen to either his Tim Ferriss podcast or the Joe Rogan, they're so good that I've listened to them both multiple times. He's able to succinctly take these like groundbreaking ideas into one sentence. Here's just one of my favorites from him. I have so many. Success and failure both lead to the same place, which is dissatisfaction. The only difference is the road that you take to get there. And the way I interpret that, we just talked a lot about the business, but we really focused on the failures, right? So whether I'm successful and I had $100 million and I have all these cool cars that I've got Legos and posters of in my back, I'm ultimately going to get those. And then a few years later, I'm going to be dissatisfied looking for the next thing, right? So whether I succeed to get there or I fail to get there, I'm going to end up in the same place. And those failures, a lot of times you have these successes that were lightning struck and there was maybe some luck involved, and our ego likes to think we did it all. We know how to do this again. The reality is you may not, and it may have just been a circumstance of timing, a little bit of luck. I'm certain you had something to do with it, but I promise you this, those failures you make that punch you right in the face and you've got to get up from and you got to deal with them, and you will never make those mistakes again because you lived it. Those lessons are incredibly more valuable than the successes. So what Naval is saying in that quote is, do not be ashamed of the failures. Just make sure you don't make them again, because ultimately, whether you succeed or fail, you're going to be dissatisfied in the future. So keep making progress and keep pushing the boundaries.
I really like that, and I'm going to start listening to those episodes for sure. And as I don't know if I said it, but as I always say in every episode, please make sure to go to the DTCinsider.com if you are not already there. Click on this episode, and there you will find all the show notes. And among those notes, you will find the link to follow Naval. And of course, hopefully you will find these episodes that he's mentioning right now, because I'm sure that you will get a lot of value, and I know that I will go check them out. So Ryan, it was a pleasure to have you on. I really enjoyed the conversation. So please tell the audience where they can go to learn more about the company.
Yeah, www.thefeelgoodlab.com. And we've got plenty of information on there. And like I mentioned before, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn or directly in my email, ryan@thefeelgoodlab.com, I'd love to connect.
Ryan, you were amazing. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Brian.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.